And if you can tick got it, then that's that barrier out of the way. So that's how the session's going to work. As I say, if you do have questions as you go through, do type them into the chat as you go so that you don't forget them. But Richard's going to speak for a little period, and then we will, of course, open it up to questions. The session is very much focused on the course. If you do have any questions about other things, such as accommodation, student support, student funding, for instance, then do please email us separately about that, and we'll be happy to help with that. But today's session will be very much about the course. Without further ado, then I will hand over to Richard.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much, and well, it's good to see you. Thanks for finding the time to come and learn about this MA. I think we've got anything up to an hour, and my experience is that I can speak. I'll give you a sort of 10-15 minute overview with some information about the program, the course, and then open it up for questions, because I think the questions you might have are going to be questions that other people have too, and that can be the most interesting part of it. So if my internet goes down, because it went a bit wobbly this morning when I was doing some teaching, so apologies in advance if that happens. Just bear with me, and it always comes back, and usually it only takes about 30 seconds. So just if that happens, I'll just come back in, just stay on this call or whatever we call these meetings. Okay, great. So Central, I don't know, I also don't know how much you already know. So there's quite a few people in this meeting, and some of you will have gone through on the website for Central, you'd have looked at the program, probably most of you have done that. There's also quite a lot of information on the website in terms of the program specification, which is the official MA document. And different people have kind of dug into that to different extents. So I'm not sure, there will be a diversity of how much people know on this call. So what I'll try and do is give you a bit of a sense of an overview of the program and a bit of the context, and then a bit of the specifics of the 2 years in terms of the schedule and the curriculum and so on. So I'll start sort of wider in terms of drama therapy as a profession and the training. The first thing I often say at open evenings or these meetings is that Central does a training which is a 2-year full-time training, but there are 4 other trainings in the UK. If you're looking to train in the UK, there are other trainings internationally too, which are worth bearing in mind. But they all teach drama therapy. So there's Anglia Ruskin University, there's Derby University, and there is Roehampton University, and there's a new course which has just started actually in Scotland, which is an MSc in drama therapy, which is quite exciting. And I think the thing I would encourage you all to do is do what you're doing now and go to the open evenings of those universities, go to and find out about the different programs, because it might well be that you're suited to one more than another. And by that I mean the teaching practice is different, the contact time is different, the methodology is different, although it's the same subject, it's the same discipline, which is drama therapy. So at Central, we are a 2-year full-time training program, and one of the things to bear in mind and to get across to you immediately is that it's very full-time. So I know that some MAs in the UK, at least these days, are classified as full-time MAs, but in terms of contact time at the university, they can vary anything from 1 to 4 days a week. So it's important that you know at this point of your investigations that the Central course is in the first year at least 4 days a week at Central on site. And now that has implications, of course, in terms of funding, and we are aware of that because it has an effect on whether or not and how much you can work alongside the MA to fund it. But the pedagogy is one where we work intensively in that first year and experientially. So it's what I'm getting across to you is it's very busy. It's a very busy 2 years. So in terms of the balance and the juggling of other things in your life, which probably will for most include some sort of paid work to fund it, it can be a challenge. That it's not to say it can't happen, and many students do work alongside the training, but it's just to get across to you that actually the MA is not 1 day a week. There's quite a lot of work to do over the 2 years. And I can talk a little bit more in detail about the curriculum in a moment. One of the other features of the course at Central, and unlike any of the other programs at Central, is that it is a clinical training. So as with the other MA in drama therapy courses I mentioned there, Anglia Ruskin and Derby and so on, these are the programs that are approved by the HCPC, the Health and Care Professions Council. And what that means is that the MA needs to teach to standards of proficiency, which are published by the HCPC. And those are clinical standards. So what we have is this kind of, we straddle the academic in terms of the MA. There's all of the MA, the M-level standards in terms of University of London benchmarking. And there's the clinical standards of the HCPC, which makes it a rather unusual hybrid in a sense, but an exciting one insofar as a student, you would be working on clinical practice to generate your understanding of clinical competency and application in clinical settings. And you would be cultivating and developing your academic skills. So what comes with that is a course which is both assessing essays and expecting students to read academic work and work on your feet with clients as a trainee drama therapist, and usually part of a multidisciplinary team. Okay, just to give you a little bit more of a sense of the content and the methodology, which makes it distinct from the other drama therapy programs. So you will have probably read in the literature somewhere that the program is based on and teaches what's called the Sesame methodology, the Sesame approach. And the Sesame approach has its own heritage, it has its own backdrop. It was developed initially in the 1960s in the UK, and mainly by a woman called Billy Lindqvist, who was working, taking theatre into hospitals initially. She then, spelt sesame, exactly like the sesame seed. She had a daughter who was diagnosed at the age of 2 with schizophrenia, and she was nearly 3. And it was in that period, in that decade in the 1960s, when autism wasn't really understood particularly well. So it turned out her daughter was actually was on the autistic spectrum and was exhibiting behaviours very early on which were autistic, but it was completely misdiagnosed. Anyway, I say that because it was part of the kind of impetus for Billy to do some of the work that she did, which was initially with movement with touch and sound. It was working with non-verbal clients, and the ways in which a therapist can communicate and engage with people who don't have the capacity to use verbal language. And that was very, very much the kind of early years of her work. And then what she did over the subsequent couple of decades really is to develop a methodology which draws from the work of some of the work of Rudolf Laban in terms of his observation of movement, the work of Peter Slade, and who some of you might have heard of, many might not, but he did some pioneering work in the 1950s in Birmingham, actually, with young people in terms of drama, and wrote a book called Child Drama, and really was his thesis was on the importance of child play, how play and drama as a young person can offer a means to make some sense of the world. And then Carl Jung, who developed analytical psychology, who himself was a student of Freud and developed analytical psychology, and which then moved on to become archetypal psychology, was a third sort of pillar, if you like, of the development of the Sesame approach. And then more recently, as part of the psychology strand, the method draws from more recent research and work by the likes of Daniel Stern, Alan Shaw, in terms of the intersubjectivity of psychotherapy practice. And that's drawing partly now on neuroscience and other elements of psychological research. So that's a kind of a brew, if you like, and it's moving forward at the moment. One of the key texts in the analytical psychology unit is a book called The Racial Complex, which is by a Black African-American woman called Fanny Brewster, and she's looking at the notion of race in psychotherapy and how it's historically been a very white discipline, and that we're really moving with the times in terms of understanding how psychotherapy and drama therapy can be a diverse discipline in terms of its reach and in terms of its self-articulation. So that, you know, we're constantly moving this Sesame methodology forward in terms of who's researching, who's publishing, and what our reference points are. Okay, so I'll end with two more points I want to cover. One is placements, and then the other is the kind of student experience, just to kind of map that a little bit for you. How are we all getting on? Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay, great, you're staying with it. So placements, as I said earlier, we're kind of under the jurisdiction, if you like, if that's the right word, of the HCPC. And part of the remit there is that every student needs to complete 100 sessions of clinical practice during the MA. 100 sessions of clinical practice. So the way we've interpreted that is that in the first year of the MA, we organize what are called apprenticeship placements in the spring and the summer term of the first year. And what that looks like is every Friday of the 10-week term, in both of those terms, students go out in groups of 2 or 3 with a specialist supervisor on site and run a drama therapy session. So that might be in a PRU, in a pupil referral unit. It might be in a, there's one of this year at the Bethlehem Royal Hospital in a dementia ward. And the supervisor works usually in that institutional context. And they are there in the session when the students run the drama therapy session. And we call that an apprenticeship model. And you can understand why. Basically, there's somebody who's specializing in that area to support and also assess the work of the students on that particular placement. So that happens in the spring term in one placement, and then that's replicated in the summer term, but in a different institutional context. So that maps up 18 18 out of the 100 sessions, which isn't that many, which leaves the remaining 80 or so to happen in the second year. So the second year of the program, students are out on placement work, usually 3 days a week. And that's where the remaining placement sessions are accumulated and developed with different, within different contexts and with different client populations. In the second year, the time at Central is not so much. It's every Monday, and that entails group supervision and work towards the final unit, which is the Sustained Independent Project, which is the portfolio, the 12,000 word portfolio, which is handed in at the end of the MA. So there's a bit on placements. I'm sure you're going to have, there's usually questions on placements, which is fine, but I'll leave it there at the moment in terms of the placement information. So the last thing I wanted to mention, and I know this is a lot, it's quite a lot of information. I hope you're staying with me. But the last thing is about therapy. So another requirement from the HCPC, which was actually done in consultation with the training programs themselves, and also reflects psychotherapy training, is that in order to train as a therapist, it's important to have therapy as a student. And I'm sure you can understand the rationale for that in terms of working, doing some work on your own yourself in order to then work better as a therapist. And that starts at the beginning of the program and runs all the way through. It consists of individual psychotherapy, which is weekly, at least during the first year. And then in the second year, there's a group drama therapy which students join, which is outside of the program. So all of the therapy, it's not assessed, of course, but it is a requirement. So as a student, you would experience individual psychotherapy yourself and group drama therapy. And that's part of the pedagogy, really, of the course. Just noticed my, I don't know, I've gone really blurred. Suddenly okay, I don't know why that is. Sorry. Sorry about that. I've just gone onto the laptop instead of the other one. Okay, that's probably enough from me. I hope that was a useful intro. I mean, there's so much more I could say about it, and yeah, let's move over to questions. And there's a couple of screens on the go here, so I'll do my best to look out for hands. Maybe we can use the raising the hand there. I can see one already. Suzanne.
I'll unmute myself. Can you hear me okay? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Oh, great, lovely. Yes, just a couple of questions came to mind. Was you mentioned about the portfolio of the 12,000 words at the end. If you do not complete that satisfactorily, does that mean you fail? Is that half of it along with the practical, or is it based fully on that portfolio essay, I guess?
Yeah, Thanks. The portfolio consists of what's called an extended essay, which is 7,000 words of it, and then a 4,000 word case study and a 1,000 word professional development plan. And yes, you need to pass actually all the units within the MA in order to then go forward for the HCPC. We send a list to the HCPC once the exam board's happened. But yeah, in order to, there is an exit point after the first year with a PG dip, but very few students opt for that.
Okay, and just a second question before Carolyn, just also about when you go to the placements in order to work to get hands-on experience.
Yeah.
What would you say the percentages of people that go to those placements for that experience? Do they ever carry on in employment with them because they get on well with them? And do you have a list of contacts that you can recommend to us to go to then get employment after we've trained?
Yes, I'm really keen on kind of converting placements into these places then employing graduates. We do some work on that, and it does happen a lot. I mean, not with all of them, because some of the NHS placements are good NHS training placements for students, and they already have arts therapies teams there. But where it's a new school, for example, or a new day centre, and they haven't had arts therapies before or drama therapy, they will often see how much the service users or the clients get from it, and then will employ someone, which is obviously a great outcome all round.
Yeah.
In terms of the administration of it, we have a whole sort of bank of or a network of institutions with whom we work. So we've got, I think, about 40 on the books at the moment in terms of in the Greater London area institutions that students work at.
Okay, ostensibly you could be a little bit self-employed after you finish though, and have to create your own openings in prisons or educational places like you say, but the best result would be if we're able to use some of your contacts. But if not, would you say that it's up to the individual to create the opening to say to institutions, I could be your drama therapist, if it wasn't NHS?
I think those sort of skills in communicating it to people is really important, because it's still a relatively small discipline. So I think that part of the educational and the kind of entrepreneurial is really useful. I mean, there are jobs advertised for drama therapists, because it is, you know, it's an allied health profession. It's formally an allied health profession now, which is great.
Yes.
But, you know, because of funding cuts, and we could get into the whole political landscape of it, but, you know, it's also, there's not hundreds a week coming through.
No,
so I think that kind of, to generate the work as a self-employed drama therapist is the reality for many graduates. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Right, who Kerwin, is that right pronunciation?
Yeah, well done. Not many people get it right first time. So my question is kind of about like the application process, and I just wondered, how much do we need to sort of demonstrate and know already about a lot of the principles of drama therapy, and obviously specifically like Jungian psychology and the Sesame approach in our applications? Like, is sort of passion and some relevant experience enough, or should we do a lot of reading before we even consider applying to kind of know the terms and have opinions on them?
I mean, we're hoping that the interviews are going to be face-to-face for this academic year, ahead of the beginning in 2022. In terms of preparation, I think it's really good to, as I said before, do your homework about the different approaches, and certainly to do some reading about the Sesame approach. I mean, there is published work, I think it's not helpful to come to an interview and then one of the interviewers says, you know, so what have you been reading about drama therapy? You know, what sort of what have you come across? What's inspired you, or what don't you agree with? And for the interviewee to say, not, I haven't really done any. That's not particularly helpful. So, I mean, of course, you can't cover all of it because there's quite a lot of published work out there, but certainly, you know, do some reading before, so you've got an angle on, you know, what inspires you, or what you disagree with. I think it's important to do that. By the way, I can quite happy to send people a short reading list, which I mean, it's not extensive. I think it's got something like 8 or 10 publications on it, which can be a bit of guidance if you want to. Just email me on the CSSD on my email, and I'll send that back via email. Does that help? And did I answer that?
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I just had another question as well. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on how this course differs to other courses. If we're looking at different ones, what would you say is particularly different about this course?
Well, I think one of the main differences is in the name. It's drama and movement therapy. And so I think one of the things we do is combine a lot of the work is on your feet, especially the first term. But throughout the first year, there's a lot of movement work in the studio. So I think we do a lot of experiential practice. I know Roehampton do too, but I think that the emphasis on the movement and the emphasis on bodies in space, and I mean, Aleka Lutsis is the tutor who runs the movement unit. And then the movement with touch and sound unit are distinct to the Sesame approach. So I think those kind of hallmarks of it, really, in terms of working with that non-verbal, intuitive, spatial sensitivity in terms of communication. That would be one.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Right then, where are we? Just going to try and put my other camera back on. Just bear with me a second. There we go. That's better. I can see people more clearly. Right, where are we? Adriana, I'm just going from the top left here.
Hi, I just had a question. It actually builds on the last one, so it's a good order, I guess. It's about, you know, it's a MA in drama and movement therapy, and I'm wondering, at the end of the course, if we're successful, we're certified as a drama therapist. Is movement therapy at Central, is that separated out? Like, is it two different disciplines, or in general, would you say that the approach is that kind of merging into one discipline?
Yeah, I mean, history is important here because about 12 years ago, which was before the HCPC approval process, it was during the consultation period. We'd always been drama and movement therapy since the late 1960s. And so dance movement therapy at that point wasn't on course to be validated by the HCPC. So we leaned towards drama therapy. So in terms of the qualification, and the qualification with the HCPC in the UK at least is arts therapist, arts with an S. And within arts therapy, it then specifies whether you're music or art or drama. And actually dance movement psychotherapy is not currently regulated by the HCPC. So it's a bit complicated, but we leaned towards drama therapy, and we just articulate the approach to drama therapy as one which is very much based on working with the body and so on. Yeah,
and then so that would be a big difference between Central and other programs that you know of at least?
Yeah, because Anglia Ruskin, for example, and Roehampton, they run dance movement psychotherapy trainings, don't they? And Central doesn't.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Leisha. Hi.
Hi, just to mute myself. Hello. I have 3 questions. I wanted to ask, can the content from our placements and personal therapy be included in the 12,000 word portfolio?
In terms of your placement work, then your part of the portfolio is a 4,000 word case study. So that's directly reflecting critically on some of your placement practice as a case study.
Okay.
In terms of your therapy, that's a good question. Your therapy is very much your own process, but the pedagogy is a reflective one. So there is also opportunity to link the academic work with some of the personal process in terms of the assessments, which I wouldn't have time to go into now, but the praxis of that in terms of personal reflection and academic learning aren't always completely distinct. And there's mechanisms we have within the assessment scheme to offer you the opportunity to look at the bridging of those 2 areas.
Right. Thank you.
Was that the first question?
That was the first question, yeah.
Right. Okay.
So secondly, I understand group therapy is also a fundamental requirement. I was just curious as to why it's not with our class peers, but we do have class supervision. I just wondered why it's out of the class.
Yeah, good question. I mean, part of the course which I didn't mention is in the first year, what's called group process, which is for 90 minutes every week with your peer group, which is usually a group of 20 students. And that's facilitated by a group analyst. But it's not therapy. The idea behind that group is it's an opportunity to look at dynamics within the cohort and to learn about unconscious dynamics within the student group, but it's not strictly speaking therapy. So it's distinct from that.
Right, okay. Sorry, I'm just making a note. Okay, and lastly, do we get the opportunity to choose our placements?
Yeah, yes. I mean, we have in the first year, the apprenticeship placements, we have a kind of limitation. We ask students for preferences and we try as best we can to give them their preferences. Doesn't always happen. And then in the second year, it's very much a kind of dialogue between the student's tutor and the student as to what placement they would like to do. So we have the placement database. We talk about areas of specialist interest that the students are interested in. And then, yeah, so that's a process that happens over the summer term ahead of the second year.
Right, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Alice, hi.
Hi. I'm very interested in the movement and nonverbal aspect of the program. So I've been looking into both dance movement psychotherapy and this particular drama movement therapy. And I think I'm wondering how much of the course is drama and what it means, because I find, especially with dance movement psychotherapy, becoming more somatic and very Latin based. I find the movement bit from the course description somehow similar. So I'm kind of trying to identify where the difference or the similarity is a little bit more.
Between dance movement psychotherapy and this program?
Yeah, I think especially the movement bit, because I've I attended the foundation course in dance movement psychotherapy at Roehampton last year.
Right.
And my background is both in dance and movement for theater. So I really love the nonverbal aspect of the therapy, I think. So I'm kind of trying to determine what is more suitable for myself.
Yeah.
So trying to understand that, yeah.
I mean, in concrete terms, in the first year, in the autumn term, there's 2 hours a week with a lecture on the movement practice and 2 hours a week at the moment with Rachel Porter on movement with touch and sound, alongside 2 hours of drama and alongside 2 hours of myth and storytelling. So about 50% of that first term, at least actually, is working with movement practices. And I think that my experience is that it's almost like we work with the drama through the movement, like the movement comes first, and then the drama and the theatre practice originates from the body. So I mean, even with a lot of actor training, methods, we look at, I look at Meyerhold and Etude, for example, as a kind of practice which is bioenergetics. It's based on the body. And so I think even the drama strand is less to do with scripted work. It's more to do with the sort of body-based actor training methods. So, I mean, having said that, I know dance movement therapy training also moves towards text. So there are these crossovers, and they are there are elements of them that are shared and indistinct. But certainly, the movement with touch and sound, it is quite original to this program in terms of Billy developing it. And I would encourage you to read some of Rachel Porter's published work, because she contextualizes it and gives it a critical frame in terms of attunement practices and some of the work of Alan Shaw and so on, and trauma study. I don't know if that helps. It's a good question. It's not an easy one to answer.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Leander, is that correct?
Yes, it's Leander. Yeah, thank you. I have 2 small children. What are the day-to-day hours like? How often does it creep into evenings or weekends?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. It doesn't creep into evenings and weekends hardly at all, if that's good English, which it's not. There are some extracurricular things that happen at Central as well, but it's rare that you would be expected to be at Central before 9:30, and it's rare that you would be scheduled for classes after 4:30, although in the spring term of the second year there is a unit that runs on a Thursday until 5. I mean, yeah, but it's a good question in terms of the amount of the juggling act that it would be, and is actually for some students currently who are parents too. Yeah. And it's something to bear in mind in terms of energy and time, but it's doable. I think there are, that would be something in an interview we would explore in terms of support systems, in terms of like how you feel you would manage. And we would just, again, it's just about being aware of how busy it is over the 2 years. I mean, the thing to remember as well, just as an addendum to that, is remember postgraduate terms are shorter than school terms. So postgraduate terms are 10 weeks, which means you've got, the autumn term is 10, the spring term and the summer term. So actually the taught provision is 30 weeks a year. So it does mean that, at the Christmas break and at the Easter break, there's 4 weeks and 4 weeks. And then in the summer, there's also some time, although some of that's preparing for second year placements.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Crystal.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, in terms of like the amount of people in course, is there like a big range of people in like one class? Obviously on the application, it says obviously you'll only accept a certain amount of people. So I was just wondering like how big are the like lesson sizes?
Yeah, sure. So the cohort number is usually 20, and then usually the majority of the program is taught to the 20 students, although it's split into 2 groups for some of the facilitation practice work, and then the placements, as I mentioned, the small groups of 3. So it does change, you know, in terms of constellations of groups, but the majority is one cohort of 20.
Thank you.
That's all right.
In terms of like, because I'm personally studying BA acting at the moment, so would there be like a lot of expectation on like theory-based stuff before coming to the course, or is it still like workable?
What was the first bit? I missed the first bit.
So I'm currently like a BA acting student.
You're BA acting
So
at Central, no? Or...
No, so I'm in University of Northampton, so also having like the contact hours of 30, but I was just wondering, would it like collide with each other in terms of like the theory aspects, or would you like expect there'd be a theory base before coming to the university? Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the application, as you will probably have read from the admissions information already, we're looking for at least a year's worth of relevant professional experience. And that's very difficult to articulate because it can be very broad. But for example, if you have worked as a teaching assistant, for example, within a school alongside the Senko, and you've worked with children with challenging behaviour, that's relevant. If you've worked on a drama project with adults with learning disabilities as an artist, that's relevant. If you've worked, you know, in a clinical team as a volunteer working in a CAMS unit, that's all relevant stuff. So we are looking for some of that experience to be part of the application. So that's the professional experience. Alongside that, the academic backdrop can look quite different. So some graduates don't necessarily have a psychology background and have an actor training background or have done a theatre studies degree. And we don't specify exactly what that needs to be, because a geography student could be very interested in the psychology of migration. So, you know, these are important things to think about, and we don't just specify psychology, because psychology degrees in this country are very clinical and remain very behavioural, for example. And coming back to the preparation point, though, in terms of you know, a consolidated and robust application, I do encourage people to, you know, to start reading and to look at the research, to look at the published work on drama therapy, not just in the UK but internationally.
That's great. Thank you so much.
No problem. Where are we? I can see, is it Pernica? You got a question?
Yeah, it's Purnika. I just wanted to confirm, it's still not clear to me that what kind of prior experience does this course require? Like you mentioned that one should have worked with children or people with disabilities. So I'm not pretty clear about it. Can you please elaborate a bit?
Yeah, I can. I gave those examples just to kind of give you a flavour of what would be relevant, because I think so many things can be relevant. I think if the main parts, the main sort of component parts of relevant professional experience are to work artistically in some way, and that might be through drama, it might be through the visual arts, it might be, but usually we're looking for some sort of drama or movement work in a professional context, with either within a therapeutic project, or as a teaching assistant, or as a support worker. So it's kind of hands-on work, and the language we use, which is completely inadequate really, is people with specific needs.
Yeah.
That's what's published in the prospectus. But we've all got specific needs, of course. So what does that mean? But I guess in terms of society at large, what it does is it identifies people, for example, with learning disabilities. And within that, there's a certain provision in terms of the voluntary sector and in terms of the social sector. So it's about engaging with those communities in some way using the arts. It's not to say, that's the primary thing. It's not to say that other work experience and life experience isn't relevant. So, one of the things we're also looking for is a maturity in order to train. So life experience is obviously, being a parent is part of that. It's not necessary, of course, but it's part of that. To have traveled to different countries around the world is part of that. To have a kind of sense of the positioning of this program is part of that. So it's not to say that's not relevant, and that comes into the application too. Okay. How are we getting on for time? It's 2:05, gosh, already. Georgia, I can see other hands up, by the way, sorry. Let's go Georgia, and then Alice, and then Susanna. Is that okay? And then Leisha.
Thank you very much. One thing I just wanted to clarify based on what you just said, am I right in thinking then that your kind of primary clientele would be people with specific learning needs?
Say the question again. My clientele, what do you mean?
Not yours, as in like, so the drama and movement therapists tend to work with people with specific learning needs / disabilities, more than say someone who is dealing with trauma or loss or other kind of psychological issues. Or have I misunderstood that?
No, I wouldn't say that that's the case. I mean, if you were to kind of do some research in terms of where drama therapy is happening professionally, I think you would see a massive increase in the last 5 years in working in schools and education.
Okay, yeah,
I think you would see an increase in working in CAMS and forensic services within the NHS. So there are certain areas that I think it's really gathered momentum in terms of funding and provision. But if I think about the placement institutions in the second year at the moment, there's one at an organisation called Grief Encounter, so that's working with children and bereavement. So bereavement services are part of it. It's really a very broad the idea of application, including at the moment we see a lot more children's mental health is a question which is far more in people's minds, I think, not only children's but post-pandemic, and I think there's a real awareness of mental health needs for many people. So I think it's also happening. There's quite a lot happening in that area in terms of funding at the moment. So it's really broad in terms of the application of the method, I think.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's all. Actually, you've answered the rest of my questions.
All right.
Thank you.
I can't remember who I said now. I've got Giovanna, you haven't asked the question. I'm just going to people who haven't asked the question yet, and then I'll come to everyone else, hopefully. Giovanna, have you got a question?
Me first?
Yeah.
I remember, okay, only one question. Are international students are able to apply for this MA?
Yes, yes,
Okay, thank you.
no problem. Who did we have next? I can't remember.
Alice, I think.
Thank
I'll
you.
I'll just unmute you for this one.
No, thank you, Amy. Alice.
Thanks. Yeah, it kind of goes along with George's question about the application of drama movement therapy. And you mentioned that in the last 5 years, it's moving more towards education. And I'm personally a little bit, I think, more interested in that sector than the purely clinical application. So I was wondering if you could say a little bit more towards the field that it's also moving into.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I mean is it's people are more aware of drama therapists working in schools as part of the team, alongside the Senko, alongside the teachers. So I think it's becoming more of the fabric of educational institutions. I mean, there's still a long way to go, by the way. It's not to say that it's not also really being developed in different areas and different sectors as well. I mean, I think it's worth having a look at the website of Roundabouts. There's an organization called Roundabout, and a lot of their work, they're brilliant at fundraising and profile raising of drama therapy. And what they do is coordinate provision within schools in the borough of Croydon, in just south of London, where they employ drama therapists, and then they work in these different schools. And you know, they've been going for a good 3 decades now. And they're a great example of how you know, a charity can coordinate and really work towards, you know, drama therapy provision in schools. And they're also doing a trial on working with drama therapy and autism. And I think, you know, they're in the middle of an RCT at the moment. So the research element in terms of, you know, supporting the commissioning of drama therapy on that level, whether it's schools or other sectors, is really important. So research is a key aspect to it, I think, in terms of really grounding and supporting a rationale for people to commission drama therapy. Because of course, when you ask for a set of some funding towards something, usually the question comes back of like, okay, well, show me some evidence. So that area is really crucial, I think. And Roundabout have done some really good work as an example in that. Okay, no problem. We've got probably about 5 minutes, because I know we don't want to go over the hour. Suzanne and then Kerwin.
Okay, yeah, you're saying so much, it's bringing up questions, so sorry if I'm dominating it, but
that's all right.
There's 3 that I came up with, just sort of practical really, as much as anything. Application, but also, do you audition in some capacity for this?
We do. It's a day interview at Central at the moment. Well, that's what we hope it's going to be, which is a morning group interview, and then a half an hour individual interview in the afternoon.
Okay, brilliant. And also, do you accept grant submissions or scholarship for the funding side of things? Absolutely,
and I really support anyone who can access the funding for this program from anywhere.
Okay, and finally,
because that's important. One note on that is sometimes it can be really helpful to getting funding and grant applications to get an offer, which then can be part of your funding application. So I always encourage people to apply early, and then if you're lucky, you know, if you do get an offer, you can get the offer confirmation from Central, and that can often be a really crucial part of the puzzle in terms of applying for money and funding. So just to say that.
Oh, to get the sort of confirmation letter from Central to then go back to your grant, or to get the grants first? Is that?
I mean, either way, I just think it's a really support, because the funder then knows that you've actually secured a place. Yes.
And finally, it's probably really obvious and other people might know this, but what is the actual cost? And I believe we've kind of missed the boat for this. It was October that it started for this year, wasn't it? So is it next October 2022, or are there other options?
Yeah. No, it's the next intake is October 2022.
Okay.
And if I can leave, I don't know about the fees.
Right. Okay.
Amy, are you there? I don't know whether you can.
I am. I'll just check the website.
Suzanne to that.
Yeah, the fees will be on the course page, but I'll have a look for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have one more question, and then we should probably call it a day? Kerwin.
Yeah, it was just a final thing about the experience. I know a few people have asked, but I just wondered, so does the experience have to be using drama with vulnerable people, or can it be that you have experience with vulnerable people and drama, you know, in maybe your own personal drama, or does it have to be together? Because I have some together, but not loads. I've got more separate.
Yeah, no, that's fine, and you know, it doesn't all have to be in the middle. It can be in these two areas. I mean, there's a lot to be said for it being in the middle, but I know that opportunities to get that sort of work experience can also be limited, which is why we try and keep a kind of wide perspective on it, because you know, if you've done a theatre studies degree, you'll probably have done some sort of placement work or some sort of project work within that anyway. And of course, remember that you've got time now, because the next application or the next intake is October, to also look at online, you know, if you need to kind of bolster your academic knowledge of psychology, that, you know, there are various online short courses which you might be able to look at, and all of that helps. If you feel that, you know, you've got a lot of experience in the practical work but less experience in the academic and not a background in psychology, then of course there's time for you to address that in terms of, you know, what you do as part of your application. And often applicants will say, I'm in the middle of doing this work experience, and that's also fine. It doesn't have to be kind of completed by the time the interview is. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming. And just to say that if you'd like to remind you that if you'd like me to email a reading list, then I can do that. Just drop me an email at my central email. I hope that's been helpful and interesting. I'm sorry we can't cover everything, but I hope to have given you a bit of a gist of the program at Central. Amy, is there anything else we need to do from admissions, or?
I don't believe so. The recording will be sent out, so there's like another opportunity to ask any questions that you have and send them to openevents@cssd.ac.uk if you have any follow-up questions.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Amy. Take care, everybody. Adios. Go well.